Hello, and welcome to the review session for the three branches. This is going to help you immensely when you study for your exam in May, and it may help you guys tonight as you start studying for the three branches test, which is coming up very shortly. So what I'm going to, Waddle's down, he's back. Welcome. Waddles will be a guest star, as well as Pork the Pig. So we're going to get talking about the 20 topics that are going to be on your AP exam, and they're also going to be on your test. And so we'll start with number one, which is redistricting and gerrymandering. This kind of starts the whole legislative process, especially in the House, because every 10 years we have a census that is constitutional, by the way. They count up everyone in the nation, and then they reapportion the seats. And so Georgia, the last time we did this in 2010, gained 1 seat. And so what we have to do is now we have to redistrict because we have more seats than we used to have. And so redistricting should be an easy process, but it's not because it's left up to the state legislatures. It's a reserved power. The state legislatures are controlled by partisan politics. And so redistricting is redrawing the state lines, but gerrymandering is redrawing the state lines for a partisan advantage. So make sure you know redistricting is simple, gerrymandering is very political. When you gerrymander, so when you redraw the district lines for a partisan advantage, you need to keep in mind that you have to keep every district the approximate population value. That has been established in Baker versus Carr, one man, one vote. You cannot have one district of 5 people and another of 1 million. So make sure you keep that in mind when we talk about gerrymandering. Some other things with gerrymandering is you have to keep them compact and contiguous. You can't have crazy lines all over the place. That doesn't work either. But every district is okay until it's challenged in the it's challenged in federal court. And so if it's challenged in federal court, then it could be ruled unconstitutional. But right now we've got some pretty crazy gerrymandered districts in America. So make sure you know redistricting left up to the state legislatures, and because of that we have gerrymandering and the provisions on gerrymandering. That'll help you out. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 is incumbency advantage. So now that we've got the districts, hey there fella, it's Waddles. Sometimes Waddles just pops up. He's kind of unpredictable, right? Just unlike incumbents, because they're very predictable. Nice little segue there. Incumbents tend to win 90% of the time, and the reason why is they have specific advantages. You guys should know these already, but the number one advantage they have is pork barrel politics. Pork barrel politics is when representatives bring money and jobs back to their district in order to get reelected. Okay, and we talked about the bridge to nowhere being a pork barrel assignment where they got, I think, $400 million to build a bridge to a town of 50 people. That was strictly done so the representatives in Alaska could get reelected. That's a great example of pork barrel politics. Franking privilege, the ability for congressmen to send mail for free. No one else in the world can do that, just congressmen. That is an incumbency advantage. Name recognition, media coverage. They're on the media more. We think they're more important. We continue to vote for them because we think they're important. The challengers don't get that sort of media attention. And last but not least is casework. My grandma didn't get her Social Security check. It's very upsetting to my grandmother. Waddles was very upset. She contacts her congressman. Her congressman can then go to the Social Security office for her and do that and hopefully get that sorted out a lot quicker than my grandma could on her own. That's casework. There's a lot of different examples of casework, but that's a good one to use, okay? So the incumbency advantage, why do incumbents get reelected? 90% of the time it's because they hold these specific advantages that no one else has, and that's why you see people in the Senate for 50 years, people in the House for 40, 50, 60 years as well. A lot of people think it's a problem. I don't really care what you think about it. I mean, I do care, but it's not going to be on the test, so sorry. But there you go. Number 3, differences between the House and the Senate. This is a pretty big topic, okay? We can look at it from the constitutional differences. 2 specific powers of the House would be, can you say it out loud? Go ahead, say it out loud. Oh, yeah, that's right. You were correct. Originate revenue bills and impeach the president. Very good. I'm very proud of you. The Senate has 3 powers according to the Constitution: ratify treaties, ratify appointments, and hold the trial after impeachment. So those are constitutional differences. The main difference we need to look at, though, is the difference in the rules. The House has a Rules Committee. The Senate does not. And because the Senate does not have a Rules Committee, they could have someone filibuster. A filibuster is unending debate. They can get up there and literally talk about whatever they want. Why do they filibuster? Primarily it's to stall a bill. Okay? Primarily it's to stall a bill. They get up there and they can talk about whatever they want. It doesn't have to be on topic. If they want to get up there and play Pork the Pig's favorite song, they can do that. They can do it as long as they want to, until someone tries to end a filibuster with what we call cloture. Cloture is 60 votes, not 60%, but 60 votes. So if there's 90 people there, you still have to have 60 votes. 60% would be less than 60 in that case. And so it's always 60 votes. 60 votes ends a filibuster. Filibusters are used a lot of time, again, to stall. They're used a lot in judicial nominations. Okay, judicial nominations and filibuster kind of go hand in hand, so make sure you know that. Those are some of the main differences in the House and the Senate. Leadership is also a difference. The Speaker of the House is in the House. Speaker of the House is elected by the people of the House, not the American people. So the representatives elect the Speaker of the House. The American people do not. And then there are 3 leaders in the Senate. Constitutional is the Vice President. When the Vice President's not there, you've got the President pro tempore, and the person that has the actual power is the Senate Majority Leader. All right, so those are some differences you need to know between the House and the Senate. Congressional committees. 4 committees I need you to know too. The 2 that I need you to know are standing committees and conference committees. Standing committees are permanent subject matter committees. Committees that will always be there. Health care, right? Defense, agriculture, education. Our standing committees, we're always going to deal with these issues, so we're always going to have a committee. There are 2 specific standing committees in the House that you have to know. The Rules Committee, it sets the rules for debate. That is why there's no filibusters. That's why Pork, oh, he's coming back. That's why Pork can't make an appearance in a filibuster in the House, because they have a Rules Committee. And second one is the House of Ways and Means. The House of Ways and Means is where all the revenue bills originate, going back to the constitutional powers of the House. So all the revenue bills originate in the House of Ways and Means. Those are 2 committees that are only in the House, not in the Senate, that will be on your AP exam, and that will definitely be on your test, and make sure you know that. Congressional checks on the President and Congress is going to be number 6. You guys just need to know these things. We've already talked about them in the constitutional unit. Overriding a veto, right? That is a check that Congress has on the President. Approving appointments, ratifying treaties are all checks that Congress has on the President. Okay? Now, one primary constitutional conflict is going to bring us to number 8, which is the War Powers Act. The primary constitutional conflict between the President and Congress is war. Congress declares war, while the President can deploy troops. And so what happened was the President was just deploying troops all the time. There was no declaration of war, and Congress felt like they had their hands tied behind their back. So what did they do? They passed the War Powers Act of 1973, which does 3 things, and you need to know all 3 things. The first thing it does, the President must notify Congress within 48 hours. The second thing it does is the President can deploy troops, because we need him to be able to deploy troops. So he can actually deploy troops without congressional approval. But he can only do it for 60 to 90 days. 60 days in peacetime, 90 days in wartime. After that 60 to 90 days, if Congress does not approve, then he has to bring the troops back. And he has another 60 to 90 days to do that. Those are the 3 provisions of the War Powers Act. In case you were wondering, this bill was vetoed by President Nixon. It was then overturned by a 2/3 majority in the House and the Senate. That's how you overturn a veto. That's the War Powers Act, and you absolutely need to know it. Let's look at number 9. Formal powers of the President. We go over this every time we play trivia. You absolutely have to know the formal powers of the President. I'm going to just go off the top of my head with some right now you need to know. Veto. Pardon. Call special session of Congress. Stay the Union. Write treaties. Commander-in-Chief of the Army. I'm sure there's other ones. I just can't remember them right now because I'm trying to do all this one time, one take, and those are the big ones, okay? If I forgot one, then I'm sure someone will tell me, Coach Chasson, you shut up, I got it, my bad. That one's on me. I've given you enough. Now, the informal powers, I will remember because they are very important. 3 informal powers that start with an executive are very important to know. Executive agreement, executive order, and executive privilege. Executive agreement is a treaty without the advice and consent of the Senate. 2 checks on an executive agreement are, go ahead, you tell me. No, yeah, that's it. Very good, very good. Oh, and that one too. Very good. Yeah, you are correct. Cole Childers was the one that answered that one. Cole is correct. Two checks on an executive agreement are: Congress does not have to fund it, and it expires when the president leaves office. An executive order is a rule or regulation from the president that has the effect of a law. There are some checks on this one. All right? Checks on an executive order can be ruled unconstitutional. Congress does not have to fund it, and the next president can override it. All right, those are three checks on an executive order. Last but not least is an executive privilege. That's essentially the right for the president to not have to answer questions about what he's doing in his administration. Almost a right to privacy for the president, so he doesn't have to go in front of congressional oversight committees. This does not extend to criminal matters. That was the decision of... No? Yep. Yes, United States versus Nixon. Good job. Criminal matters does not extend to executive privilege. There was a few other court cases that you may need to know. Clinton versus Reno, which says executive privilege does not extend to personal civil matters. And then Nixon versus United States, you cannot sue the president for what he does in office. Okay? Those are informal powers. The most important, in my opinion, informal power is the bully pulpit. The ability for the president to get on television and connect with you and I, get us on his side, and then Congress would have to do whatever the president wants. That is a very, very important power. FDR made this famous with his fireside chats. Number one advising group to the president brings us to number 10. Oh my gosh, number 10, 11 minutes. All right, we're going to speed through this. Number one advising group to the president is the White House staff. The leader of the White House staff is the chief of staff. He's the gatekeeper to the president. Why is the White House staff the number one advising group to the president? It is because they're not appointed. They're the closest friend. They're not appointed, which means they don't have to be approved. They're also the closest friends and advisors of the president. They're the ones that he knows that have been with him during all of the campaigns. He is going to trust them more than anyone else, not the cabinet. The cabinet sometimes goes native, and going native is when you have your own personal beliefs, and a cabinet member goes with their own personal expertise and beliefs over the president's. That happens sometimes, especially in like agriculture, where the president may not have any idea about corn subsidies, but the Secretary of Agriculture, because they're there based on the Merit System, Pendleton Act, has to have merit. They have to have expertise in this matter. The president may not. So the Secretary of Agriculture will more than likely trust their own beliefs, their own ideas, rather than the president's. All right? Bureaucracy. Wow, that's a really big topic. Bureaucracy works for the president, created by Congress. Congress is the number one source of power for the bureaucracy. Okay, but because of that, Congress and the president can check what happens in the bureaucracy. All right? Other bureaucratic things you may need to know is when they are given the power from Congress. So understand, Congress does this. They give them broad limits, if you will, or broad limits doesn't really make sense, but they give them a broad agenda, and they ask them, the bureaucrats, to fill in the gaps. That's how Congress gives the bureaucracy power, and when they're filling in the gaps, they're doing two things. They are writing laws, they're called rules, administrative rules, or administrative law, and they're also adjudicating matters. And when they do both of these, they are in danger of violating separation of powers. Bureaucratic agencies are split up into 4 different groups. I need you to know, let's go with 2. You already know about the cabinet. You know about the cabinet, and the thing you need to know about the cabinet is not necessarily what they do, but what their leaders are called, their secretaries, except for the Attorney General, who's the leader of the Department of Justice. The Attorney General is the leader of the Department of Justice. He is not America's lawyer. That's the Solicitor General. And you also need to know why the cabinet is not the most trusted ally of the president. We've already talked about that. Executive agencies, they do things that are either too important or too expensive. FBI, CIA, NASA, they're all there under that. Then you have government corporations and regulatory commissions. Regulatory commissions protect the consumer from businesses and industry. Eminem said it best. The FCC won't let me be me on MTV, so let me see. I don't know the rest of that song. But what he was essentially saying is the FCC is regulating me to protect Coach Dassinger's daughter. There she is. From bad people that use bad words. Eminem, I don't need you to use the F word around my daughter, please. And you won't be able to because the FCC regulates you on radio. And government corporations operate for a profit, like the post office, even though they really lose money. But that's okay. That's neither here nor there. You need to know that. Checks on the president. We've already talked about that with Congress, so we're going to skip over that one. The judicial jurisdiction. Hey, we're in the home stretch. It's time for a pork break. We're just going to let them keep playing while I continue this top 20 topics of the three branches test. We are on number 14, judicial jurisdiction. Very simple. Original and appellate. Original is where the trial happens. Appellate is obviously the appeals court. There's only one court in America that has both, and that is the Supreme Court of the United States. However, most cases don't even get to original jurisdiction because they are settled out of court, which is a plea bargain. So there you go. Those are the two types of judicial jurisdiction. If you are going to get to the Supreme Court, more than likely it's going to be through the appellate jurisdiction. That's the primary source of the Supreme Court's caseload. The only way you get to the Supreme Court through appellate jurisdiction is if you ask the Supreme Court to give you a writ of cert, and they grant you a writ of cert. That takes 4 justices. And all you're doing is you're asking the Supreme Court to review all of the past documents of a court case. If they have 4 out of 9 justices vote to grant you a writ of cert, what they're doing is they're saying, we will review all the past documents of the court case and we will render a decision. That's what a writ of cert is. It's very simple. It's a very simple matter. A lot of people try to make it more complicated than it really is. But the only way you get to the Supreme Court is if 4 of 9 justices vote to hear your case. This is a huge way the Supreme Court controls policy. Because if they grant a case, then they're definitely going to make a decision on it. And if they don't grant a case, which happens in most scenarios, like 99% of the time they deny the case, they're still setting public policy by doing that. It just goes back to the previous case. And the greatest example of that was what we did in class, same-sex marriage. The Supreme Court just voted to not hear that case, which means the previous ruling stands. The previous ruling overturned laws that outlawed same-sex marriage in places like Virginia, North Carolina, and all of the states that are now in those Circuit Court of Appeals little area. Okay? So that is a big thing, the writ of cert. Make sure you know that entire process. It starts in the original, you appeal, and then you appeal one more time to the Supreme Court. If they have 4 out of 9 justices, they grant your writ of cert, which means they're going to review all the past documents of a court case. Whew. What else we got? Waddles break. And while you're looking at Waddles, I'm going to have a little bit of water. So it's a water and Waddles break all in once. Whoop, oh, there he is. Oh, I can't get the water open. Oh, it's all on my shirt. That's not good. All right, last few things are the factors in deciding a case. 3 really big factors that they have in deciding a case. Number 1 is the facts of a case. That's the writ of cert. They've looked at all the past documents of a court case. Obviously, that is a huge factor, right? The second one is past precedent. That's going to go right back down to number 17, which is stare decisis. Let the decision stand. The past precedent of a court case is a huge factor in how the Supreme Court decides most cases. A great example of this would be Brown v. Board. Separate is not equal. That has been applied in so many other cases since that because of past precedent. So when there is a constitutional question, they're going to look at the Constitution, they're going to look at the documents of the court case, but they're also going to look and see how other courts had ruled on this issue. Okay? And last but not least is this thing we call an amicus curiae brief. Interest groups use these a lot, but it really is any person that is a non-litigant, so not a part of the court case, can write a brief, submit it, and when they gather up all the past documents of a court case, that's a document now. They have to review that. When I say they, it's the Supreme Court. They have to review that document. And so if you want to, you could actually have an influence or try to have an influence on every Supreme Court case. You could just write an amicus curiae brief on every single one that they are hearing in a term, and they may read it. They're supposed to, at least, but probably their clerks will. So there you go. Interest groups, like I said, primarily use this. Once they've had the factors of deciding a case, and they're ready to make their decision. Their decision is called an opinion. There's three opinions: majority, concurring, and dissenting. The majority opinion is the law of the land. That is the one that's going to carry that stare decisis, right? The concurring is agreeing with the majority but adding to the opinion. Whether you disagree with the rationale or you just want to add a couple of things to this opinion, then you can do that. And the concurring, and obviously the dissent, is you disagree with the ruling and you tell everyone why. Those are the three types of opinions that the Supreme Court has. And last, oh no, almost, the big factor that we have not talked about, that all three things really are predicated on. And the reason you can almost predict in a lot of difficult cases who's going to be in the majority and who's going to be in the dissent is by looking at their judicial philosophy. There's two types of judicial philosophy that I need you to know. The first one is judicial activism. All you need to know for the court case is judicial activism is a type of philosophy that demonstrates a willingness to change laws, to protect the minority or legislative irresponsibility. Okay? That's judicial activism. The second one is judicial restraint. Judicial restraint is restraining from making a decision that will overturn a democratic law. Okay? And the case we looked at was Texas versus Johnson. Activism changed it, even though 48 out of 50 states said that we should protect the flag. You can't burn the flag. An activist would say, I'm going to demonstrate a willingness to change this law because I believe that everyone should have the free exercise of their speech, their expression, even if it's a small minority of people that want to burn the flag. I'm going to do this for that small minority because it's a right that everyone should have. Someone that believes in judicial restraint would say, sorry, but since it's not clear in the Constitution and 48 out of 50 states have banned it, then we're going to defer to the legislative will of the people, and we're not going to make a substantial decision based on our own beliefs. That's the difference between activism and restraint. Last but not least is judicial nominations. Constitutionally, the President appoints and the Senate approves. But there are some political factors. When the President is appointing someone, first off, he's going to look at someone who has the same ideas. Understand, judges can't be partisan. They can't be Democrats or Republicans per se. And so he's going to look at past decisions to see what judicial philosophy matches up with his philosophy, because they leave a lasting legacy. Remember, the nominations to the Supreme Court can stay until they die if they want to. They have tenure for life for good behavior. So it is a very, very crucial decision, and they want to make sure they're selecting someone that believes the same thing they believe. But at the same time, they need to keep in mind that the Senate approves. So if the Senate is an opposite party, or they have enough to filibuster, they may make some concessions and not necessarily pick someone all the way to one side, but try and come a little bit closer to the middle so they don't get their appointment filibustered. And that is it. That is the top 20 topics that are going to be on your three branches test, and the top 20 topics that you could see on the AP exam. And remember, the three branches is the most important part of AP government. 35 to 45% of this is going to be on your AP exam. So, for pork and waddles, I hope you enjoy the constitutional three branches review, and I wish you the best of luck.